والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, in today's talk we'll continue the era of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu that we started a few months ago. And last week we talked about the relationship between Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu and Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhuma. And as we are aware of many of the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the enemies of Islam, they have tried to use some of the events of the history specific to things like dismissal of Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu by Umar bin Khattab from some of the positions. And they try to distort the relationship that the Sahaba Ridwanullah alayhim had among each other. And we clarified those points specific to two of the dismissals that Umar bin Khattab did to Khalid bin Walid last week. And I think from the facts and the correct history, we see that those events were linked to some specific decisions made by Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu as Amir al-Mu'mineen. And we also understand that those dismissals did not take Khalid bin Walid away in any sense to be one of the members of the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu under the leadership of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, and he continued to be the one who served in the Muslim armies, and he was one of the greatest generals of not only among the Muslims but the history of mankind. So today we'll start talking about some of the conquests that happened in the time of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. And obviously the expansion happened very rapidly in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, and it will be almost, it's very difficult for us to cover all those conquests that happened in the time of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Hence, we'll pick some of the most important ones and the ones that we can, inshallah, learn a lot of lessons from them. So, one thing to understand is when Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu became the Khalifa after Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu passed away, we find him the very next day, he wanted to pick up where Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu left. What I mean by that was, in the time of Abu Bakr, the expansion in the direction of the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire already started. And specifically Iraq was going on. And we find that a great distinction when it comes to Umar's attitude after the death of Abu Bakr compared to after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, we see that Abu Bakr was the firm one who wanted to continue where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left. For example, the army of Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhuma was prepared by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sahaba ridwanu alayhim, and specifically Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu were among those people who wanted to prevent Abu Bakr to go along with this decision at that time. Same way, same thing when it comes to the war against the Murtaddeen. He wanted Abu Bakr to not go ahead, at least give them some time. Now, we discussed that in quite detail in our previous talks. I will not go in that direction, but the point I want to make sure we understand is Abu Bakr, the era was about 2 years, 3 months or so, or 4 months. And this time was enough for Umar to be prepared in a manner. Now, Umar was not the one who was trying to hold back anything. He wanted to continue where Abu Bakr left, and he was trained now further under the leadership of Abu Bakr. And Abu Bakr said, if you remember the specific statement he made to Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anhu, because he was one of the Sahaba who talked to Abu Bakr about the nomination of Umar as, what are you going to say to Allah Azza wa Jal? The person like Umar that you have left behind, a harsh person like Umar. And Abu Bakr's response to him was, he said that he will tell to Allah Azza wa Jal that he nominated the best among you. One. And second, he also reaffirmed to Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anh that when the burden of the leadership will fall over Umar's shoulders, you will see that he will be softened up as well. And we saw that in the history, how Umar radiallahu anh changed. So the point is, he continued on the front of the Iraq, and in the beginning when he was asking the Sahaba that who will go in the direction of the Iraq, and he was not getting any positive response yet. And let's not forget about the Iraq when we talk about the Persian Empire. And the Arabs used to be afraid of the Persian Empire. When it comes to the power, the Persians had, or Sassanid Empire as referred as well. So after a couple of days, the person who replied to go in the favor, what Umar was asking was Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi. Rahimahullah radiallahu. He was not a Sahabi. When he is the one who spoke that he will go and he will bring the people along with him to continue the conquest of Iraq. So Umar radiallahu anh made Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi as the leader of the army because he's the one who responded the first. And along with him, there are many battles happened, including the Mark of Namariq, Saqatiyya, Inkaskar, and Barusma. And the one in which the Muslims later on were harmed the most was a battle of the bridges. And that's where we see that Abu Ubaid radiallahu anh al-Thaqafi, where he made some mistakes that the Muslims had to pay for it. And the army of the Persian was across the river, and there was a bridge that they had to pass. And he took the decision of crossing the bridge with the army. And when he crossed the bridge with the army, what happened was now the Muslim army was stuck in a very narrow place. And the other side, they had the Persians. And not only that, they also ordered to break the bridge so Muslims cannot go back. And the Muslims had a great loss. And Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, he already told by his wife a dream in which a vessel came down from the Jannah, and Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, he drank from it, and his son drank from it, and about 5 or 6 other members of his family, they drank from it. And Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, he said, that is a glad tiding of Shahada. Hence, he mentioned that if he is martyred, who should take over? And about 7 people were mentioned, and after that, the name was Muthanna bin al-Haritha al-Shaybani. If you remember, Muthanna radiallahu anh is the Sahabi who talked to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah was looking for Nusra from different tribes in Banu Shayban. And he was the leader of Banu Shayban when it comes to the army. And at that time, Banu Shayban, they declined to give the Nusra, unconditional Nusra to Rasulullah, even though they were giving conditional Nusra because they did not want to fight with the Persians at that time. Subhanallah, look at this. At that time, because Persia was the ally, they did not want to fight, because the Iman was really not entered into the hearts of the people of Banu Shayban. And Rasulullah ﷺ even praised these people at that time that at least you came out truthful, and wouldn't that be nice? In a very short period of time, you will be entering into the area and you will be opening it. And they said, yes, that would be nice. And subhanallah, the very same person played one of the biggest roles in opening the Persian Empire. specific to Iraq area. And after Abu Ubaid and his family members were martyred, Muthanna bin Haritha radiallahu anh is the one who took over, and he was able to escape with 4,000 soldiers back. The army was 10,000, 6,000 were martyred. And then after that, other battles happened. The battle of Buwaib happened. And it's an interesting battle. This battle happened in the month of Ramadan. And the Persians, they were gathering the bigger army to attack the Muslims. And when Muthanna radiallahu anh, he found out, so he commanded specifically to the Sahaba, to the people in the army, including the Sahaba were part of them, of course, to break their fast. Because it's going to be a battle, and it is allowed in those circumstances, so they will have more strength to fight the enemies of the Persian Empire. Anyways, so Muslims came out victorious in this battle as well. And Muthanna, because he was very well aware of the tactics of the Persians, he dealt with the Persians in the past, the Iraq, people of Iraq. So he specifically used the tactic of do not go into the army, do not cross the river by yourself now, rather let them cross the river. And when they cross the river, they are already tired. And hence, you can fight with them. Now, while they were doing that, the Muslims this time, they broke the bridge this time. So they cannot return back. And Muthanna radiallahu anh, he looked at it as a mistake later on, because he said that when you do this kind of situation, when the army does not have a way out, then they fight with you they have nothing to lose. And hence, the battle became very dangerous for the Muslims as well. But even then, the Muslims came out victorious in that case. Now, today, I'd like to talk more about the battle of the Ma'rakatul Qadisiyah. And this is one of the biggest battle, or you can say that as a make or break deal against the Persians. And now while this Qadisiyah was going on, there's a lot of things in the background with the Persians going on as well, Persian Empire. And when we're talking about the Persian Empire in the background, the army, the Persian king Khusro, he was killed by internal civil war. Not only him, but many of his family members, many of his children were killed, brothers were killed, and so on and so forth. The next people in line were killed as well. And hence the army, at the end there was a woman who was leading, and now the main person, the front person for the Persians was Rustam. He was the one who was leading the armies. Now, later on, they found one of the inheritors of the Khusro, which was Yazdgard or Yazdjard. And around them, they were able to gather most of the Persians back. And not only that, even the ones who had alliances with the Muslims, they had a treaty with the Muslims, and they returned back to Persians. They broke the treaty. Now, when this happened, now Khalid Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, he wanted to gather the Muslim army, reinforce the army, and now this time he made Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anh as the leader of the army, and now he gathered he reinforced the army by different tribes, even to the point, this is the first time since Abu Bakr Siddiq's time that Umar radiallahu anh allowed the people who were among the Murtaddeen, but they returned back to Islam. And Abu Bakr's strategy was anybody who fought as a Murtad, do not allow them to be in the army of the Muslims. And Umar radiallahu anh, because of the situation the Muslims were in, he allowed them with this specific condition that they will not have a leadership position. And this is the first time the concept of conscription is started among the Muslims, meaning that anybody who is capable was included in the army of the Muslims. So the Muslims were going and making sure anybody who is capable, whether he wants or does not want, he will be included. And on the other hand, the Persians were doing the conscription as well. Some of the authors, they talk about as if it's the Umayyads' time, the conscription happened the first time, but we see that it is the time of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. Now, Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas was appointed as the head of the army, and Umar radiallahu anhu, he himself wanted to go and lead the army, meaning direct Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas from behind the army as well. Now, and that his instructions were, do not go inside the region of the Persians, rather stay in your region, the Arab region, by the oases or the border areas, and let the Persians come out of their homeland and let them come in the areas where you are equal in that sense. Now, when Umar al-Khattab went out, he consulted the Sahaba from Ansar and Muhajirin, and most of them, they agreed with Umar to go out and lead the army. It was Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu. He came out and he said that Umar should not go and lead the army. Why? Because if Umar goes and if something happens to the Umar radiallahu anhu, then the Muslims will be in a much bigger problem than what they are in now. And at the same time, see, one thing is common to look into here, whether it was the time of Abu Bakr, whether it was the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, they are the one who are going out. Because the purpose of these battles were to raise the kalamatul haqq. It's not like what is happening, for example, in Pakistan and India, that Muslims are attacked in Kashmir, and then now you're thinking about whether to respond or not to respond, or how much to respond. And same thing we see in Palestine, for example, in Gaza. So these are the things we have to compare when we are talking about these battles as well, that look how the circumstances were in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or in the time of Khulafa Rashidin, and how it has changed because now the implementation of Islam has been taken away. Now today I'd like to just cover about the Qadisiyya. There are multiple advices that Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu gave to Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu regarding the fighting against the Persians. The specific ones that he talked about were, one specific thing he said was, and I'm going to quote, he said, I am ordering you and the troops who are with you to fear Allah in all circumstances. And for fear Allah is the best weapon against the enemy and the strongest weapon in war. I am commanding you and those who are with you to be more careful in avoiding sin than in avoiding your enemy. For the sins of the army are to be feared more than the enemy, their enemy. The Muslims are supported by their enemies' disobedience towards Allah. Were it not for that, we would not have any strength, for our numbers are not like theirs, and our weapons are not like theirs. See, so this is what we see. So one of the key things that Umar wanted to make sure that they understand this. And he also pointed out that how do you know that Allah is on your side? He also said that you will see that outwardly that people will love you as well when you are moving forward. As the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ says, and it is accordingly that Umar was saying, the hadith says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى إِذَا أَحَبَّ عَبْدًا نَادَ جِبْرِيلَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَبَّ فُلَانًا فَأَحِبَّهُ فَيُحِبُّ جِبْرِيلَ. That says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves somebody, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands Jibreel to love that fulan. And then ثم ينادي جبريل في السماء إن الله قد أحب فلانا فأحبه. That then Jibreel called the people of the heavens, which is the Malaika, that Allah loves this fulan, so you love them as well. فَيُحِبَّهُ أَهْلُ السَّمَاء. So the people of the heaven also love the specific person. وَيُعْضَعُ لَهُ الْقَبُولِ فِي الْأَهْلِ الْأَرْضِ. And then they will place the love of the people on the earth as well for the fulan person. So Umar just pointed out this aspect of it. Now, moving forward, the other advice that he gave, he made sure that they understand. The second point he said was thinking constantly of Allah, emphasizing the sanctity of the towns whose people have peace treaty with the Muslims. Meaning, when you're passing through them, you're not the one who should be not taking care of the sanctity or the alliances that you have made or the treaties that you have, so you don't break any of the treaties. And the third thing he pointed out was using different methods of dealing with people depending on their relationship with the Muslims and not burdening them with more than they could bear. And Umar asked his commander not to oppress or mistreat the people with whom Muslims have treaties for the sake of seeking victory over those with whom they were at war. Meaning, the ones who have the treaty, you must fulfill the treaty. Do not break the treaty just because this way you think you can win the war. And the fourth principle, he said, is gathering sufficient information about the enemy. The Umar drew attention to the importance of relying on scouts from the best elements of the army in gathering information. And this is some habit that we see in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would send the Sahaba around the Medina or whatever was the state at that time to collect the information about the enemy. So you are taking the actions based on information which is verified information. So Umar suggested the very same thing to Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu as well, that make sure that you are getting the information about the movement of the enemy as well, so your move will be according to the movement of the enemy. The fifth principle he mentioned was that appointing the right person for the right job. What means by that is, do not appoint somebody who is not capable of certain things. That's one thing. And he is capable of undertaking the action. Meaning, you're sending an army to fight the Persians. So the person who is capable of fighting that specific group of Persians, he should be the one who plays in the position. Not the one who is not capable of fighting that specific type of the fight that he's getting engaged in. So, and taking all the means, the Muslim should refrain from fighting also. But be prepared for that if necessary, whilst taking the utmost precautions. So these are some of the things that Khalid bin Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh suggested Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Now, the question should come to our mind that when we are talking about Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anh, the one who is from the 10 Sahaba who were given the glad tiding, the one whom Rasulullah ﷺ said, my both parents, my mother and father, be sacrificed for Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anh. Why would he need this kind of advice then? The thing is, Sa'd radiallahu anh understood it well, that the advice is a reminder for you, and it is beneficial for a believer. And hence he took it in a positive manner. Today we see that somebody has some sort of a position, whether it is position as in the army, position in ruling, position in running any of institutions, organizations. And the moment somebody is at a position that has some authority, we find that they miss this point of be open to the criticism. Be open to take advice, because advice can make you better. And that's what we see when Umar radiallahu an was advising, whether it was Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas or Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah or Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, we find that they were taking the advice with open arms. At the same time, they also understood he is the Amir al-Mu'mineen and his commands must be followed if they are commands. If they are recommendations, suggestions, they should be looked into as if of any other person advise you of something. So inshallah, next week we will talk about the more detail about how Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anh, he dealt with the army of the Rustam, and specifically we'll talk about the dealings of the Muslim envoys that were sent to Rustam to talk about the battle, or prior to the battle that was going to start. So inshallah, today we'll stop our talk here.